Welcome, dear readers, to a story where the lines between love and deception blur, and a ring on a finger holds a truth more shocking than any vow. Imagine waking up in a stranger's bed, wearing nothing but silk, with a diamond blazing on your hand and a billionaire watching you like a prized possession. The wedding was last night, they say, but you remember nothing, because there wasn't one. This is a tale of a woman trapped by a lie and a man bound by a secret. Get ready for emotional depth, dramatic twist, and an angsty, juicy love story that's anything but cliche. Will she uncover the truth before it destroys them both? And can love truly bloom when it's built on a foundation of blackmail? Stay with me as we unravel the secrets of I woke up in his bed with a ring on my finger. The wedding was last night, I don't remember it. You don't want to miss a single moment of this addictive romantic mystery. Don't forget to subscribe to follow Calla's unforgettable journey.
Chapter 1. Strangers and Diamonds. The first thing Calla Morgan registered was the light, a soft, expensive gold spilling through tall windows. The second was the smell, not her usual blend of freshly brewed coffee and old books, but something deeper, richer. Cedarwood and sin, she thought, a strange, unsettling phrase for a waking mind. Then came the feel of the sheets, impossibly smooth, cool, and undeniably silk. This wasn't her apartment. This wasn't even her city. Not really. A sharp, unfamiliar ache throbbed behind her temples, a dull drumbeat against the quiet hum of an air conditioning unit. She blinked, eyes struggling to adjust, and the room slowly came into focus. A vast, minimalist space with panoramic views of a glittering cityscape. Skyscrapers pierced a pale morning sky, a testament to wealth and power she only ever glimpsed from the ground. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at her. Where was she? How had she gotten here? She shifted, and the silk whispered against her skin. Skin. She was wearing next to nothing, just a wisp of a nightgown that felt alien, almost non-existent. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Then she felt it, a presence beside her. Warmth. A slow, steady breath. She froze, every muscle tensing. Slowly, fearfully, she turned her head. He was there, lying on his side, propped on an elbow, watching her. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, were intense, unwavering. He was shirtless, a sculpted landscape of muscle and shadow, his dark hair falling artfully across his forehead. He looked utterly composed, utterly in control, as if waking up beside a stranger in a lavish penthouse was just another Tuesday morning. Damien Voss. The name hit her with the force of a physical blow, the city's most feared, most untouchable billionaire. A ghost story whispered in hushed tones, a man whose name conjured images of sharp suits, sharper deals, and a ruthless ambition that left rivals in ashes. She'd seen his face on magazine covers, in fleeting news reports, always looking distant, impenetrable. But to see him here, in this bed, so close she could feel the radiating warmth of his skin, was a surreal nightmare. He looked at her like she was a deal he had just closed, a complex negotiation successfully concluded. There was no surprise in his gaze, no confusion, only a quiet, unnerving certainty. Her throat felt impossibly dry, constricted. The question clawed its way up, a desperate whisper. What happened last night? Her voice was thin, shaky, barely recognizable as her own. A faint, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of his lips. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. He didn't answer immediately, his gaze dropping from her eyes to her hand. He reached out, his fingers long and cool as they closed around her left hand, lifting it. The diamond flashed. Blazed, actually, in the morning light, catching every available ray and scattering them across the silk sheets like captured stars. It was massive, an audacious declaration on her ring finger, a perfectly cut, brilliant cut diamond, flanked by smaller stones, set in what looked like platinum. Her breath hitched, her blood ran cold. This couldn't be real. His thumb traced the cool metal of the band, a slow, deliberate motion that sent shivers of disbelief and dread down her arm. His eyes, still holding hers, were unreadable. Then his voice, a low rumble that resonated through the quiet room, as calm and steady as the sunrise. We got married? Chapter 2. The Night She Can't Remember. Calla stared at the diamond, then at Damien, then back at the diamond, as if the sheer size and sparkle of it would somehow make the words he'd just spoken make sense. Married? The word was a foreign body on her tongue, tasting like ash and disbelief. That's impossible. I would remember getting married. Her mind, despite the lingering fog, scrabbled for any fragment of memory, any echo of a ceremony. A white dress, flowers, vows, a crowd of faces, anything. But there was nothing, only a cavernous blank where a life-altering event should have been. "You had quite a bit to drink last night, Calla," Damien said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, as if discussing the weather. He sat up, pushing the silk sheets down to his waist. The movement was fluid, effortless, and her gaze, against her will, snagged on the hard planes of his chest, the taut lines of muscle. He was undeniably, almost offensively, attractive. It only deepened the surreal horror of the situation. "A bit to drink?" she scoffed, pushing herself up against the headboard, pulling the silk nightgown tighter around her. "I don't black out from a bit to drink. What exactly did I drink?" He finally met her gaze, his eyes like chips of flint. "Champagne. Lots of it, apparently. You were quite insistent on celebrating." "Celebrating what?" she demanded, her voice rising. "This is insane. We don't even know each other. I barely know who you are beyond the headlines. We met, once? At that awful gala?" A flicker, very brief, almost imperceptible, crossed his face. "The Voss Foundation Gala. Yes. Last night. You were there, remember?" A hazy image surfaced, the opulent ballroom, glittering with chandeliers and flashing cameras, the drone of polite conversation. She remembered feeling overwhelmed, out of place among the city's elite. She'd been there as a guest of her friend, a junior architect hoping to network. The rooftop terrace, a desperate escape from the suffocating crowd. The cool night air on her skin. And then, a fleeting, almost forgotten moment. A dimly lit hallway. The quick flash of a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by shadow, his hand clasping a briefcase. And another man, larger with a distinctive red tie, disappearing around a corner. It was all a blur, an insignificant detail that her mind hadn't bothered to properly catalog. And then, nothing. An abyss. "I remember the gala," Calla said, her voice strained. "I remember the rooftop. I don't remember any marriage. There's no way." Damien swung his legs over the side of the bed, his back to her, and she suddenly felt intensely vulnerable, exposed in the vastness of the room. He walked to a large, dark wood desk against one wall, his movements precise and unhurried. He opened a drawer, retrieved a folder, and turned, walking back towards the bed. He held it out to her. "Here," he said, his voice flat, emotionless, "for your perusal." Her hand trembled as she took the folder. Inside, neatly clipped, was a single sheet of paper, a marriage certificate. Her name, Calla Morgan, next to his, Damien Voss. The date was yesterday's. The location listed was the penthouse itself. And at the bottom, 2 signatures. One, bold and decisive, undeniably his. The other, scrawled and wobbly, almost illegible, but with enough familiar loops and slants to be hers. Her stomach churned. It was her signature. "How? This is impossible," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is forged." "It's entirely legal," he countered, his eyes locked on hers, challenging her to argue. "And witnessed." "Witnessed by who? Where's the proof? Where are the photos? The video? The dress? No one gets married, especially you, without a spectacle. There's no dress. No guests. No?" She gestured wildly around the empty, silent room. No evidence that anything actually happened, beyond this piece of paper and that rock. She lifted her hand, the diamond mocking her with its brilliance. "We eloped," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "It was spontaneous. You suggested it." "I suggested it?" Calla felt a hysterical laugh bubble up, sharp and painful. "Me? To you? You're out of your mind. I wouldn't marry a stranger, let alone someone like you, on a whim. This is some kind of sick joke." He didn't react, his face a mask of impenetrable calm. "Nevertheless, the paperwork is filed. The marriage is legally binding. As of last night, you are Calla Voss." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Calla Voss, his wife. A woman she didn't recognize, tethered to a man who was, for all intents and purposes, a terrifying stranger. Her mind raced, desperate for an explanation. Why would he do this? What was his game? This wasn't just a bizarre prank. There was something colder, more calculating behind his eyes. "This can't stand," she said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "I'll get this annulled. I'll call a lawyer. I'll expose you." A corner of his mouth twitched, a shadow of amusement. "You're welcome to try, but I assure you it will be far more complicated than you imagine." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her, lingering for a fraction of a second on the diamond on her finger. "And far less discreet." The unspoken threat hung between them, a chilling promise of consequences she couldn't yet fathom. She clutched the marriage certificate, the paper feeling flimsy and yet terrifyingly substantial in her hand. Her own shaky signature stared back at her, a testament to a night she couldn't recall, a decision she hadn't made, and a life that had just irrevocably changed. She was Calla Voss, and she had absolutely no idea why. Chapter 3. The Truth He's Burying. Damien watched her, a stormy tangle of defiance and fear, clutch the marriage certificate. Her signature, a drunken scrawl, was proof of his leverage, a testament to a hastily executed plan. He'd anticipated her shock, her anger. It was all part of the infuriating, necessary chaos. The diamond on her finger caught the light, a mocking glint of his forced ownership. She thought she was trapped by a piece of paper. He knew the truth. She was trapped by a bullet that had nearly found its mark. He turned away from her, walking back to the panoramic window, his gaze sweeping over the city, sprawling beneath them. The morning sun painted the glass towers in gold, a deceptive veneer over the cutthroat world he inhabited. He'd built his empire brick by brutal brick, and he wouldn't let a chance encounter with an unsuspecting witness tear it down. He remembered the night with chilling clarity, a stark contrast to her blank slate. The Voss Foundation Gala. A necessary evil, a public display of philanthropy that masked the darker undercurrents of his business. He'd been expecting the exchange with Silas Thorne, a rival whose ambition often blurred the lines of legality. The briefcase, the data chip, the details of a competitor's hostile takeover bid. Standard, albeit risky, intelligence gathering. He'd almost missed her. Calla Morgan. A wisp of a woman, framed in the archway of the rooftop terrace, champagne flute clutched in her hand. Her dress, a simple midnight blue, was elegant but unremarkable among the designer gowns. Yet her eyes, wide and startled, had been fixed on them, on the exchange. On the man in the red tie, Thorne's enforcer, and the brief glint of steel beneath his jacket. He'd frozen, his mind calculating. She couldn't have seen much, not clearly, but then the unmistakable sound had echoed through the night. A single, muffled pop, the thud of a body hitting the marble floor in a less frequented corridor. Less than an hour later, the news had broken before dawn. A high-profile target, Thorne's right-hand man, found dead. A hit. Clean. Professional. And Calla Morgan had been too close. He hadn't accounted for her sudden, drunken lurch towards the hallway, drawn by some inexplicable curiosity, or perhaps just a need for fresh air. He'd seen her just as she saw him. Not the victim, but a figure disappearing around the corner. A figure she just might be able to identify. His first instinct had been damage control, to ensure her silence. He'd had his security team discreetly apprehend her, usher her away from the scene, under the guise of an overly inebriated guest needing assistance. He'd followed, a cold knot of dread tightening in his gut. In the controlled chaos of the security office, as his men efficiently wiped camera footage and ensured no one remembered the drunk girl, a desperate, audacious plan had formed. His lawyers, formidable and loyal, were already on standby for far more complex maneuvers. Forging a marriage certificate, with a compliant, efficient, and a little technological finesse, was almost laughably simple. Her drunken, pliable state had been an unexpected boon. A signature, coerced but technically hers, had been all he needed. He'd married her not out of love, not even out of desire. He'd married her to keep her quiet, to legally bind her to him, ensuring she couldn't testify, couldn't reveal what she'd witnessed, however fragmented her memory. He needed to keep her close, under his direct supervision, until he was sure the threat was neutralized, until she wouldn't inadvertently, or purposefully, destroy him. His empire. His life. He hadn't anticipated the quiet hum of her voice in his penthouse, the unexpected splash of color she brought to his sterile world. He hadn't expected to notice the way her hair fanned out on the pillow, or the subtle scent of vanilla that clung to her. And he certainly hadn't expected the way her laugh, light and genuine, had echoed from the living room a few hours after she'd been brought here, before the sedative had fully kicked in. A simple, unburdened sound that had somehow stayed in his head, a stark contrast to the grim calculus of his decisions. It was an anomaly, an unwelcome distraction. "You're silent," Calla's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp with accusation. "What are you hiding? Why me?" He turned from the window, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm hiding nothing that concerns you, Mrs. Voss. The title felt strange on his tongue, a perverse fiction. As for why you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. He watched her flinch, her gaze dropping to the diamond. She still didn't remember. The sheer audacity of his gamble, the tightrope he walked, made a muscle clench in his jaw. She was a liability, a loose end. But now, she was his liability, his loose end. And he would ensure she remained contained, protected, until he could definitively ascertain the extent of her knowledge and the full scope of the threat she represented. He just needed to keep her close. What he hadn't expected, what he absolutely refused to acknowledge even to himself, was the insidious pull he already felt towards the woman he'd blackmailed into forever. It was a dangerous, inconvenient sensation, a weakness he couldn't afford. Chapter 4, A Prison Made of Marble. The anger simmered in Calla, a raw, burning sensation beneath her skin. She was trapped, not in a physical cage, but in a gilded one of silk sheets and panoramic views. This wasn't just a marriage. It was an abduction, a twisted form of imprisonment. And the man who had orchestrated it, Damien Voss, stood before her, utterly unrepentant, radiating an aura of untouchable power. "I am leaving," Calla declared, her voice trembling but firm. She swung her legs out of the vast bed, ignoring the way the silk nightgown clung to her, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. Her feet found the cool marble floor, the chill a welcome jolt of reality. She needed to find her clothes, her phone, anything that connected her back to her actual life. Damien moved, blocking her path with an easy, almost lazy grace. He didn't touch her, but his sheer presence, the towering strength of him, was enough to feel like a physical barrier. His arms remained at his sides, yet the air between them crackled with an unspoken challenge. "You're my wife now," he said, his voice low, a silken threat. "There are consequences if you break our vows." Calla scoffed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. "Vows? There were no vows. There was no wedding. This is a sham, a legal document signed under duress, and I will prove it." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, chilling her to the bone. "Perhaps. But in the interim, the world believes you are Mrs. Voss, and certain inconvenient truths could emerge if you decide to dispute that fact publicly." He walked over to a sleek tablet resting on a charging dock beside the bed. With a few swift taps, a screen illuminated, displaying a series of images. Calla's breath hitched. Her own face stared back at her, blurred and indistinct, but undeniably her. She was standing in a dimly lit hallway, her back partially to the camera, a champagne flute still in her hand. The background was murky, shadowed, but she recognized the opulent decor of the Voss Foundation gala. And then her eyes widened in horror. In the foreground, closer to the camera, was a shape on the floor. A man, prone. His arm was twisted at an unnatural angle. A dark stain spread beneath him. What is this?" Calla whispered, her voice barely a thread. "The victim of a homicide, Calla," Damien stated, his voice devoid of sympathy, simply stating a fact. "Discovered shortly after you were seen in the vicinity." He zoomed in on one of the photos, a grainy, night vision shot. Her blurred figure, seemingly looking directly at the fallen man. "The police investigation is ongoing. They're very interested in anyone who might have witnessed something." He looked up, his storm gray eyes piercing hers. "They'll think you were involved, or at the very least, a material witness who fled the scene without reporting a crime. Unless," he paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air, "I protect you." Terror, cold and absolute, gripped Calla's heart. Her mind reeled. This was why. This was the dark truth behind the coerced marriage. He wasn't just blackmailing her with a forged document. He was dangling a potential murder accusation over her head. The night she couldn't remember, the blank space in her memory, was now filled with a chilling, horrifying possibility. She hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. She'd been implicated. You're insane," she stammered, backing away from the tablet, from the incriminating images. "This is a setup. You did this." "Did what?" he countered, his voice smooth as polished steel. "Provided a convenient alibi, ensured your safety and discretion, consider it a mutually beneficial arrangement. You maintain your silence, and I ensure you're never questioned about what you may or may not have seen that night." Her mind screamed in protest. Her rational self, the Calla who worked long hours at the library, who meticulously planned her budget, who treasured her small, uncomplicated life, wanted to laugh hysterically at the sheer absurdity of it all. But the fear was real. The photos were real. And Damien Voss, a man who wielded power like a weapon, was very, very real. She was furious, scared, trapped. But beneath the torrent of emotions, a different, unsettling current began to stir. When he had taken her hand to show her the ring, a jolt had gone through her. When he had blocked her path, his sheer physicality had sent a strange warmth through her veins. And now, standing before him, furious and terrified, her body was betraying her. She felt the subtle shift in her breathing, the inexplicable awareness of his broad shoulders, the way his dark eyes held hers with an almost magnetic intensity. It was confusing, infuriating. How could she, in this nightmare, feel anything but revulsion towards him? Yet a flicker of something unbidden, something she couldn't name, sparked within her. It was a terrifying realization. Her body, her traitorous body, was responding to the man who had just blackmailed her into an unwanted, inescapable marriage. Chapter 5, Rules of Being Mrs. Calla's entire world had shrunk to the confines of Damien Voss's penthouse. Her small, cozy apartment, her library job, her familiar routines, all of it felt like a distant, fading dream. The marble floors of this opulent prison mocked her with their cold perfection. She tried to escape, to argue, to fight, but Damien's control was absolute, his logic chillingly irrefutable. The threat of being implicated in a murder, however false, hung over her like a guillotine. He didn't just prevent her from leaving, he moved her in. Her meager belongings, packed by someone else, appeared in one of the penthouse's many walk-in closets, dwarfed by designer gowns and suits that weren't hers. Her name, Calla Voss, was already on the deed, a legal entanglement she couldn't even begin to unravel. Her days, once her own, now followed a schedule dictated by him. A stylist, a chic, overly solicitous woman named Celeste, appeared to curate her wardrobe. Every outfit, every accessory was chosen to project an image of effortless wealth and sophistication, an image Calla felt utterly removed from. There was an assistant, a perpetually calm man named Marcus, who managed her new, perplexing social calendar. Charity luncheons, gallery openings, dinners with Damien's business associates. Each event was a performance, a carefully choreographed charade where she had to play the part of the devoted, doting wife. "Smile, Mrs. Voss," Damien would murmur beside her at these events, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a possessive touch that sent shivers down her spine, both from apprehension and, to her utter frustration, something else she refused to name. Look like you belong. Look like you're happy. But behind the gilded cage, in the quiet solitude of the penthouse, the dynamics subtly shifted, creating a disorienting blend of captivity and an almost domestic intimacy. One morning, she woke to the aroma of rich coffee. She stumbled out of bed, expecting Marcus, the assistant, but found Damien in the vast kitchen, pouring a steaming cup for her. He stood by the island, dressed in tailored slacks and a crisp shirt, looking impossibly put together even at dawn. He simply placed the mug on the counter, his gaze unwavering, before turning back to his own glass of dark liquid. He didn't speak, didn't offer an explanation. He just brought her coffee. And he continued to do so, day after day, a silent ritual that chipped away at her resolve to hate him completely. Another afternoon, she was browsing the penthouse's extensive library, a sanctuary of leather-bound books, when he walked in. He leaned against the doorway, observing her, his presence a heavy weight in the room. "Do you like gardenias, Calla?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly soft, breaking the silence. She turned, startled. "Why?" "There's a new shipment of flowers arriving. I was considering them for the terrace. They remind me of something peaceful." It was such an ordinary question, so out of place in their bizarre reality, that it momentarily disarmed her. "Yes," she found herself saying, "I do like them. They're elegant." He merely nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a beat too long before he turned and left, leaving her bewildered by the unexpected glimpse of a man who might notice such things. He stared at her when she wasn't looking. She caught him often, a fleeting glance from across a room, a prolonged observation while she was engrossed in a book, or a quiet intensity in his eyes when she was interacting with others. It was unnerving, yet undeniably compelling. It was the look of a man trying to solve a puzzle, but also, disturbingly, the look of a man who saw something he liked. The tension between them, a taut wire of suspicion and forced proximity, grew unbearable. It hummed in the air, thick and palpable, especially in the evenings when they were alone in the vast penthouse, the city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. One night, after a particularly draining charity gala where she'd perfected her happy wife smile, she retreated to her bedroom, desperate for solitude. He followed, not entering, but leaning against the doorframe, his gaze dark and unreadable. The air crackled. "You're good at this," he observed, his voice low. "The performance. What choice do I have?" she retorted, her voice brittle. "You've given me none." He pushed off the frame, slowly walking towards her. Her heart began to pound, a frantic drum against her ribs. Every step he took narrowed the distance, amplified his presence, the scent of his expensive cologne, the sheer heat radiating from him. She stood rooted to the spot, a deer caught in headlights, unable to move, unable to breathe. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the warmth of his body. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her jaw, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. His touch was firm, yet surprisingly soft, sending an electric current through her. Her breath hitched. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, a traitorous shiver running through her. His other hand went to her waist, pulling her closer until her body brushed against his. The silk nightgown was no barrier at all. Her hands instinctively came up to rest against his chest, feeling the solid rhythm of his heart beneath her palms. His gaze dropped to her lips, dark and intense. "Pretend you don't want this, Calla," he whispered, his voice a low growl that vibrated through her. "I dare you." And then he kissed her. Really kissed her. Not the brief, chaste pecks for the cameras, but a demanding, possessive kiss that consumed her. His lips were firm, hot, moving against hers with an urgency that stole her breath. He tasted of desire, of danger, and of something she couldn't quite grasp. Her mind screamed in protest, but her body betrayed her, responding with a desperate hunger she hadn't known she possessed. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, clinging to him as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had tilted on its axis. She didn't pretend. She couldn't. The lie was too big, the need too profound, the kiss too intoxicating. In that moment, in the marble prison of his penthouse, she didn't want to pretend at all. Chapter 6. Memory Leaks. The kiss was a cataclysm. It shattered Calla's carefully constructed wall of resentment, leaving her breathless and disoriented. When Damien finally pulled away, his eyes dark with an unreadable intensity, she felt a profound sense of disorientation. It wasn't just the lingering heat on her lips or the electric hum through her body. It was the terrifying realization that her physical response to him was entirely separate from the logical outrage she felt. This man had blackmailed her, imprisoned her, and yet her body yearned for his touch. It was a humiliating, confusing betrayal. He left without another word, a silent, powerful presence retreating from her room. Calla sank onto the edge of the bed, her fingers pressed to her still tingling lips, trying to reconcile the cold, half-calculating billionaire with the man whose kiss had stolen her breath and ignited an undeniable spark. The line between captor and something else was blurring in a way that terrified her. The days that followed were a blur of forced normalcy, punctuated by stolen glances and unspoken tension. They maintained their public facade, flawless and convincing. Behind closed doors, a strange dance began. Damien remained aloof, but the small gestures, the morning coffee, the curious questions about her preferences, the lingering stares, continued, subtle yet potent. He hadn't touched her again after that kiss. But the memory of it and the raw desire it had unearthed hung between them like a potent perfume. Her mind, however, refused to be silenced by the bewildering shifts in their dynamic. The blank space in her memory from the night of the gala became a nagging void, a relentless itch she couldn't scratch. The chilling images Damien had shown her, her blurred figure near the murder victim, haunted her nightmares. She was Calla Voss, the billionaire's wife, a woman living a lie. And yet, the original lie, the one that had trapped her, gnawed at her. What had truly happened that night? One afternoon, while Damien was out at a board meeting, Calla found herself drawn to the immense media room. She knew Damien used it for various purposes, including reviewing security footage from his properties. A reckless urge, fueled by a desperate need for answers, seized her. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but a fragment of memory had surfaced that morning. A flash of red, then a muffled thud. She navigated the complex system, her heart pounding. She remembered the rooftop, the champagne, the odd man in the hallway. She narrowed her search to the hours of the gala, specifically the period after she'd gone to the rooftop. Fast-forwarding through hours of footage, she finally saw herself. Drunk, yes, swaying slightly, but still aware. Then a sudden, jarring snippet. She was arguing with someone. The sound was muted, but the anger in her body language was clear. And then, clearer still, the unmistakable, terrifying sound of a gun. Not the muffled pop Damien had mentioned, but a sharp, distinct crack. Her blood ran cold. The footage glitched, then stabilized. Damien was there, his back to the camera, but his posture was tense, his arm outstretched. He was reaching for her. She saw it, clear as day. His hand, smeared with something dark and glistening. Blood, not from the victim on the floor, but from him. He was reaching for her, not in aggression, but as if pulling her away, shielding her. The image vanished as the system abruptly logged out, undoubtedly a security protocol triggered by her unauthorized access. Calla sagged against the console, her mind reeling. This wasn't what Damien had told her. He had said she was a witness. He had shown her a blurred image of herself near the victim. But this was different. This suggested a more direct involvement, a more personal danger. Why would Damien be bloody? Why would he be reaching for her? Her earlier anger at his deception began to morph into a different kind of dread. There was more to this story. A deeper layer of truth he had buried. He hadn't just married her to keep her quiet about a murder she witnessed. He was hiding something else. Something about her involvement. A frantic, desperate search began. She used her new, expensive tablet, relying on the high-speed internet in the penthouse. She discreetly researched the gala, the murder, anything she could find. The victim, the man with the red tie, was identified as Arthur Finch, a key executive at Thorne Industries, Damien's biggest rival. Her mind raced. Finch, Thorne, Damien. The pieces, fragmented and disparate, began to coalesce into a chilling possibility. Was Finch's death a setup, designed to frame Damien? Or was it a cover-up, and Damien was trying to protect himself? The image of Damien's bloody hand reaching for her flashed in her mind, and the distinct, sharp sound of a gun, not muffled at all. Was she merely a witness, or had she been something else entirely in that fateful, forgotten moment? The answers lurked in the shadows of her memory, teasing her with half-formed images, pushing her closer to a truth that might shatter everything.
The air crackles with unanswered questions. Calla's word has been irrevocably shattered, but a new, terrifying truth is beginning to emerge from the wreckage of her memory. She's no longer just a pawn, she's a target, and the man who tricked her into marriage might just be her only shield. This marks the end of part 1 of the story. What will Calla do with this earth-shattering knowledge? Will she confront Damien, risking everything to uncover the full extent of his secrets? And as the lines between captor and protector blur, can she truly trust the man who holds her life in his hands? Stay tuned for part 2, where alliances will shift, hidden enemies will emerge, and the slow burn between Calla and Damien will ignite into an inferno. You won't want to miss what happens next.